Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very fun, special Super Dandori Bros Podcast, episode 12. And we're still hyped up and also bedazzled and a lot of emotions about the Switch 2 Direct that just happened this morning. We've had time to kind of collect our thoughts, do a little bit of looking around to see what information we may have missed, and apparently there was some big stuff, but we'll talk more on that later. But we just want to give our collective thoughts about the Direct itself, what we thought, what we predicted, what we didn't predict, and go from there. How do you, now that we've had some time, Ryan, how are you feeling about the whole Direct? Has it moved down or up?
I think it's largely stayed the same. I think that there's still certain things that I wanted to see more of. I kind of wanted more first party games, but after being able to sort of reflect on it, I actually have slightly altered my opinion on that. But we'll get to it, when we get to that section of the discussion. But I think the thing that I want, the word that comes to mind is packed. They clearly crammed as much as they could into that time without really delaying anywhere. They just kept running. They started off running and then they just kept going until the very end. And, I appreciate that. I think, if I got to design the Nintendo Direct, being a Nintendo fanboy, I probably would have reallocated some of the stuff. But by no means am I disappointed in this Direct. How do you feel?
I feel mostly the same way. Definitely, I was surprised by the lack of exclusive first party games, but I was very happy with some of the things that were revealed. And again, we'll get more into that later. But overall, yeah, I agree with you 100%. It was packed. It was hard to keep up mentally with everything they kept throwing at us. And even now, after the Direct's over, there's new information that's come out. So that's why we're kind of want to talk about what's fresh in our minds. And let's get right into it. So I want to start us off with the hardware itself. Before we get into anything else, the hardware, we knew a little bit about the hardware because of the leaks, but also the reveal that they had back in January. But now we got a much closer look and understanding of what everything does, including that C button, which is no longer a mystery. It's basically Discord Lite.
Yeah, I think that's actually a really good place to start.
Yeah.
So you and I both sort of had the same opinion that they started it up and it's it's kind of like Discord. And I think you and I were mostly on board with it up until the point where they showed the game footage sharing, the live streaming. And then we both had the same reaction. For anyone who actually listened to or saw the video, both of us thought that was an odd choice to show that front and center, because the frame rate is definitely noticeably low, let's say, and it's kind of hard to watch. And I ended up showing it to my wife later, who's not super into video games. It's one of her primary hobbies, but she's not I gotta play everything at 60 to 120 frames, nothing like that. And she looked at it and she's like, that is hard for me to look at. I could not imagine using that. I would not enjoy it. I would never have that on. And I essentially have the same opinion as someone who's a bit more of a hardcore gamer.
Yeah, I think that now, here's my thought. I'm going to always try and look on the positive side of things, and I agree with you 100%. Well, the way it looks now is pretty trash, the frame rate and the resolution. And I think it's going to look even worse considering how good of a fidelity the Switch 2 can create with the resolution and refresh rates. So that's going to stand out like a sore thumb. I do think it's something that can be eventually patched and made better over time. I think this is their first version. I think if they can get some better compression systems going so they can get higher quality with less bandwidth, they could probably improve that. But I think at the moment, just using the hardware, and of course Nintendo's probably trying to reserve as much hardware bandwidth for gaming, so they've allocated the bare minimum. So who knows where that'll go, if they may fix it. If it's that way for the remainder of the Switch's life, that sucks. But I can see a Switch version 2 coming out OLED with you can play the same games, but we've improved the kind of the new Nintendo 3DS, where it's this, you can still play a lot of the same games, but it definitely had considerably better load times and better everything. They may do that with the Switch 2 down the road. So,
yeah, I could totally see that. I think, also sort of like trying to look on the bright side, I think this is a great step in the right direction for Nintendo as
Absolutely.
a general strategy. Because for the longest time, we've essentially lacked any sort of gameplay, um, or like any communications whatsoever, that weren't incredibly cumbersome. I mean, you know, there was the voice chat through the Nintendo Switch app, which I thought was kind of a weird way to address it, but it did circumvent hardware limitations. So, okay, you know, I understand. Um, and so I think in general, I'm really happy that Nintendo's moving in this direction, especially because they spent so much time as hopefully a you know a future parent, and you know you're a future or you're a current parent. Um, Having the parental controls get their own segment with that, I think was really important to demonstrate like, don't worry, it's still safe for kids. This is here for the adults to use, and you have a lot of control over this. Now for me, I'm going to switch off most of it. You know, no pun intended. I just like I'm not going to use most of it. But I could imagine if you and I get a co-op game, I would we would likely try the voice chat on it,
Yeah.
for example. I don't know that I'd go out and buy, you know, in you know the camera, which we'll talk about, you know, but the voice chat I could definitely see myself using. Not so much really any other part of the communication segment. There's another part of the chat I do want to discuss, um, in a bit, but for the communication segment, that's sort of my thoughts.
Yeah, and they focus it purely on like this like group lobby thing where you're chatting, but I don't know. I'm curious if that will eventually be a way to also help create group like games where you can invite your friends, kind of like Steam where you have your friends list and you can just invite them to join a multiplayer game or a co-op game or something. There seems like I feel like we're just seeing the first steps of Nintendo stepping out into this brave new world of the internet that's been around for a really long time, and
Yeah.
I think that they're, and again, I think people really forget who Nintendo's target demographic is. Um, it's families, it's parents,
Hmm.
it's kids, and so they can't just, you know, and we've seen the damage that, you know, online gaming and stuff can do, and like the things that kids can be exposed to or connected into. So Nintendo is definitely playing it extremely safe, and I know that annoys a lot of people, but I think as a parent, that is really nice that they are more of like a default everything off and let you turn things back on. Of course, at the moment, they haven't had even the option to turn things on, so that's kind of what this is they're adding features that you can turn on. They've emphasized, I actually watched those parental control videos afterwards, and it does seem like they're giving you pretty good control. There are some limitations to it, but they're definitely trying to make it, you know, clear that the parents are in control. It's not us. We, you know, it's not our fault. You
Yeah.
guys have got to be parents. You guys have got to step in and make sure you're monitoring your kids on your system. So it'll be interesting. And then yeah, it had the camera as well, which I thought was kind of interesting and weird. I'm not a big fan of that. I mean, I know I do Discord. I mean, even when I do video like calls with my friends on Discord, like I don't usually turn my camera on. So I get that it kind of
Yeah.
creates a personalized connection, but I don't know. That's just maybe it's just me. But I feel like that's kind of weird. Maybe some people like it.
Yeah, I personally wasn't that much of a fan either. Not because of like a paranoid like it's always spying on me thing, but like I just don't really see what like how much that really adds to the gameplay. So like, you know, they showed that you can superimpose your face over your 10 frame per second gameplay sample. And it's like, who really like wants that? Like, I don't know. Like it's fine, I guess, but you know, in this world where like most people in the world have to do Zoom meetings, you know, pretty regularly, like pretty much everyone I know immediately turns their video off. Like, you know, it's just not I don't know that culturally there's really like that much of a demand for it. As far as like the sort of Connect-esque features that they showed off in within the the Mario Party thing, which we'll talk about a bit more later. But the fact that they sort of have like an Xbox Connect feature is like I guess kind of interesting. Like I showed that to my wife and she's played one Mario Party game, and she's just like, there's certain parts of this that look good, but the camera parts do not.
Yeah.
And so I don't know, like just from like a consumer demand standpoint, I don't really know who is really wanting this or who's going to buy it. But I don't know. Maybe if they come out with some killer app that uses the camera, I don't know what it's going to be.
Yeah.
But if they found a way, like, okay, maybe then I'd be interested. I don't know. Like, surprise me, Nintendo.
Well, I'm just glad that at the very least, it's not like shoehorned into the system, so we're paying for it whether we want it or not.
Yes,
it's an
agreed.
add-on. If you want it, you can have it. It's fun. You could try it with this game, but it's not required. Same with the Jamboree thing. You don't have to have the camera. You don't have to pay for that expansion pass you don't want. You can still play Mario Party Jamboree without it. I don't think I'll buy the pass, even though I have Jamboree, just because most of the stuff they showed I'm not really interested in, like the multiplayer and the camera stuff. All the other ones I was. So I'm just gonna roll back to hardware real quick, just because I want to get through that so we can get to the good stuff. Because I think the hardware was fine,
that's true.
but I just want to route through it. So
Can I say one more thing about the chat though?
Oh yeah, go for it.
Okay, I think people are sleeping on the fact that download play is back. That's all I'm saying. Is it's connected to that. People are sleeping on that. That is huge.
Yes, no, that is massive. So for those of you who are probably in your 30s, you might remember the Nintendo DS, and I think the 3DS had that feature, or was it just the DS?
I don't remember the 3DS. No, you know what? I think the 3DS did have a feature, yes, because my wife and I played Luigi's Mansion 2 with one cartridge. We did the co-op.
Yeah, so that was
remember that now.
So that was a feature that, and I think that feature was used way less on the 3DS than it was on the DS. The DS, it seemed like, Mario Kart was a big game. I remember playing with a lot of friends. Metroid Prime Hunters. Gosh, I know there's some other games, but like games you could play multiplayer with just one cartridge was really a big deal on the DS. And it feels like they're bringing that back. And the crazy thing is that they have it for online gaming as well. Mm-hmm. So
that's wild. Like that's crazy.
Yeah,
I love it.
Now
that is the best part of that feature.
So yeah, that's really cool. That just makes certain games seem way more valuable now because you just need one person with one copy. Obviously, the caveat is that everyone has to have an NSO membership. So, but if you just have the baseline, you don't have to have the expansion pass. You just have to have the baseline membership, and you can access that feature, which is really cool. I don't think you need the online for the local, just for the online portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, like NSO Family Plan is $20 a year, and you can put 8 people on it. Like, I have multiple adults on mine. Like, it is actually like a pretty good deal.
$20 for the whole family?
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah.
Because I pay $20 a year, and I'm just on a single plan.
I don't know.
Well, we'll look into it.
Yeah.
Other hardware, so a lot of things they announced we kind of knew about. Like we knew a little bit, like 7.9-inch display, 1080p was kind of rumored, but now it's confirmed. But 120 hertz was a surprise to me. I didn't expect Nintendo to go that route because it's kind of more like high, what Nintendo's got 120 hertz on their Switch 2 before Apple's got 120 hertz on some of their iPhones. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, it is.
HDR support was a surprise, especially on an LCD display, but they've got HDR support, which is cool. 4K TV support, I kind of figured they would have more for like the menu and maybe some older games, but it sounds like they're gonna potentially support 4K in more games, so we'll see if that's to do with their DLSS stuff that they've got. The dock has a fan to cool it, so that obviously is the way they get more performance out of it. 256 gig internal SSD, again, was part of the rumors. Not a lot, but still better than 32. If you want more, you have to get SD card express, so this is an interesting thing that I know a lot of some people are upset about, and I'm actually somewhat annoyed by it. I'm glad that they're doing it because I want the load speeds, but you know how hard it is to find SD card express SD cards right now?
I have no idea.
They're like, they don't exist.
Really?
Like you can go on Amazon and buy a 256 gig from SanDisk for like $50 or something. And then there is a 1 terabyte one from Lexar, but I mean, I don't know if it's a good one. It's like the only one you can get. It's $200. So for a terabyte. So I was kind of hoping that there'd be more widely available. I'm hoping that but my concern is that Nintendo is going to be like, we have them, but you have to buy ours with our little brand on it. And you have to pay
an extra $10.
Yeah, something like that. So I don't know. I'm worried that the only way to get a 1 terabyte or a 512 or even a 2 terabyte is to buy it directly from Nintendo because no one else is selling them. You go on Amazon or anywhere. So that part could be a problem if they don't get them in stock in the next few months. So I'm rattling through all this stuff just so I can get it out there. Mouse controls confirmed. Cool. They showed some examples of it. We'll talk about that later. Built-in microphone for the chat, though probably useful for some games. Optional camera. And then the game cart is exactly the same other than it's color and I guess just internal specs, like it's faster and more storage.
That was a surprise to me. I thought for sure there was going to be like an extra tab on the side, kind of like the 3DS cartridge.
Yeah.
Something to make it like so that you just could not cram it into a Switch 1 even if you wanted to, but maybe just the Switch 1 just rejects it.
So there'll just be probably an update for Switch 1 that basically when you put the card in, it'll just say, sorry, this belongs on a Switch 2. And there'll be a bunch of angry parents wondering why this new game they bought their children didn't work on the Switch.
And it gives you a link to buy a Switch 2.
Pretty much. Yeah.
It's like, here's a QR code, scan it and go buy a Switch 2.
Yeah, right. That's basically what it'll do. So yeah, that's all the hardware. There's more of the little things like the kickstand and yada yada. But like overall, it's an improved Switch. It's basically like it's all the improvements, almost every improvement you could want out of a Switch 2 or Pro or ever. I mean, this basically is a Switch Pro. I know some people are upset about the lack of OLED. I don't know. I'm torn on that because I would love an OLED display, but I'm also of the mindset like if it's going to add another $50 or $100 onto the price tag, I'm rather they just do it this way. I'm one of those people that plays mostly docked anyway, and I have a big OLED TV, and I don't know. For the few times I play handheld, my OG Switch still looks good to me. So
yeah, I'm personally fine with the hardware in it. I am very glad that things are going to look better. I'm glad the battery life is expected to be around the same because I play mostly handheld.
mm-hmm.
And I don't know, just overall, like it just sort of seemed like if I were to create a generic wish list of like features I'd like to see, I think that's great. One quick thing I wanted to touch on with the mouse controls, they have the ability to recognize rotation because of the gyroscope in it. Like rotation of the Joy-Con, which obviously like your typical optical mouse can't really do. Which I think definitely increases the gameplay capability. So I think leveraging the gyroscope along with the laser sensor is not something I'd ever really considered before, but definitely opens up some options.
Yeah, I could see Nintendo coming up with some fun little gimmicky games and then maybe one or two developers using them, and then we'll never hear about it again.
It's certainly possible, but you never know. Maybe we get a breakout indie hit.
I would love it. I would love that. But yeah, we'll see. I'm excited for what could be done. I'm just glad too that the system overall though seems like, and I guess we obviously don't know anything about the internal specs, but you know there's rumors about what NVIDIA chip they're holding, what they've got, and what RAM they have, and based on the games that they were showing, it clearly has enough horsepower to run current gen games. Now, obviously, I'm going to caveat this, not at the same fidelity, like by a long shot. You know, they're definitely so. It's with a grain of salt, but the fact that they're even like passable, like on the Switch 1, they had to really, really gimp them to make them work.
Mm-hmm.
Switch 2, not as bad. I mean, they definitely, you can tell there's a little bit of fidelity loss, but overall, the games still look decent to me, like definitely playable. So, I don't know, be interesting to see.
Yeah, and they sped run through all of the third-party offerings for the most part. There were a few that they lingered on a bit more than others, but for the most part, they were just like, "Yep, here's all the third-party offerings coming, you know, relatively early on." And some of the ones that we had sort of predicted were there. Like I predicted Elden Ring.
Mm-hmm.
I also predicted Night Rain, which we didn't get yet. Maybe we do eventually. And then I predicted Red Dead. Curiously, that was absent, but we did get Cyberpunk. So you know,
Yeah.
it seems like they're, you know, like keen to having, you know, more mature games, let's say, from third-party offerings on the system.
For sure. I mean, there was Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Not Rebirth. It's the remake. I don't think they have Rebirth listed yet. But still, that's a sign that they can definitely release the other ones on there. So that's huge. You had Star Wars Outlaws, which is like a game that just came out. So not that I'm really into that game, but I was like, oh, that's cool to see.
You want a Jedi Survivor. You're like, this is the wrong Star Wars.
I know. I mean, it's just a stepping stone, right? Yeah, there's a lot of third party. I mean, I couldn't believe how much of that direct was taken by third party. And I'm glad to see it because it means third parties are going to back it, which means that it's going to help promote the system. There was one third party game, though.
Yeah. This one, I
got to let you talk about it because it's your game.
Yeah, so anyone who listened to the recording, you know, or watched the video, like, knew pretty early on I suspected that it was Bloodborne. And I think it like largely is. We've learned a little bit more about the game through a From Software press release. Apparently, it's like a PvPvE, so it sounds like it's almost like if they applied Elden Ring Night Rain to, which again, like we, don't have to play yet, to Bloodborne. But it definitely has the aesthetic. It has the vibe. It has some of the monster design. It weirdly has what I consider to be a Majora's Mask reference, which is the smiling moon. And so I saw that and I thought that was kind of fun. I think the big story, though, I mean, Bloodborne 2, I call it Bloodborne 2 because it's easier to say than the Dusk Bloods. And it has blood in the name, so, there we go. It's Bloodborne 2. I do think that, I think the big story is that it's not on PlayStation. It is a Nintendo Switch exclusive, and you can tell they ended with it, and the way that they led up to it, they knew this was huge. They knew this was a huge L for Sony, and they're just like, we've got something big here. We secured this. What negotiations and what deal they had to cut in order to get that, I have no idea, but it's very impressive that they got an exclusive FromSoft game that is essentially what looks like a spiritual successor to the most demanded like FromSoft intellectual property to get some sort of a remake, sequel, whatever. So extremely impressive. I think it looks great. That's a day one purchase for me for sure. And even if it isn't like a single player campaign like Bloodborne is, it looks like it's got at least some potentially cooperative elements, or even if it's just PvP. I've had fun with Souls PvP over the years. So that to me blew me away. Like that is my most surprising moment in the Direct. Easily. Not anywhere on my bingo card. I don't know. What about you? You've never really played any Souls games, but you've heard about them. You've heard me talk about them.
Oh, I know how big they are. I mean, Elden Ring was one of the biggest games that came out, and I remember Bloodborne was huge. Obviously, all the Dark Souls games, like they consistently make games that people just love. Like it just seems like they just know how to make compelling, fun games. I need to probably just try it. I've seen it played and it's intimidated me, but maybe if I just gave it a shot, and this probably will be the game where I give it a shot. Especially if there's any co-op going on, we'll play that together. But
I still think it's so funny how you're like, oh yeah, Tears of the Kingdom Master Mode, having a great time, like killing Lionels without taking any damage, having a good time. And I think Breath of the Wild. I think that's a way harder game personally. I have a way harder time with Breath of the Wild than I have with any of the Souls games. But that's also because I played the Souls games for many, many years, so I get their their formula, I get the rhythm of it. So it's maybe a bit different. Maybe my brain has been tuned a little bit differently, but you might be surprised at how easy it is to pick up a Souls game.
It might be. You might be right. I think it's also, to be fair, also part of the reason I haven't played a lot of Souls games is just the mature theme of it makes it hard for me to play it with and around my kids. And I play most of my video games during times when my kids are able to watch. I sometimes play games afterwards, but I'm a more of a social gamer. So I think if I'm playing co-op, it'll make it more doable, but I'm not good at just playing games by myself that often. But even all that aside, like I know about From Software's reputation, and so to see the words From Software show up was like a huge we're in for something. And I knew you were like way more like in tune with that, but I just was like, I know this is big, and I don't even play the game, so huge W for Nintendo. Again, I don't know what they had to do. They took all that money from Mario Kart 8 Deluxe and poured it into getting this contract. So.
Apparently, they're like, we will single-handedly fund the entire development in this game and the next one.
I know. And so that's huge. And also just a testament to the Switch 2, what they're trying to go for. I mean, it seems, it's weird. Like, they're definitely going after the casuals, but definitely going after the core gamers because, a game like that as one of the highlight games. But I don't know. So that was wild. That was a huge surprise. I know Silksong fans are eating good right now with the 2 seconds of footage they got to see.
It's more than they've gotten to see in over 1,500 days, that's for sure.
I feel like that was like the most troll move of them for sure. Like they knew.
It was so good. It was so good.
Like they sent Nintendo the MP4 file, like just put this in the Direct, and they're like, hey guys, it's only 2 seconds long. I'm like, we know.
Well, what I think is hilarious is there was, I think Arlo made a video about it, about the chocolate cake, the piece of the picture of the chocolate cake. Did you see that video?
I haven't seen that one, no.
Okay, so essentially the gist is that one of the Team Cherry developers changed picture on their LinkedIn profile to a picture of a chocolate cake, and the metadata for that, like the first time it got uploaded to the internet, was on April 2nd of 2024, and this was months ago. And so they were speculating, oh, Silksong's gonna make an appearance in the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct, and I was like, this is the craziest fan theory I've ever heard. There's no way they're doing this. And then it actually shows up. I was like, wow, that's actually really cool. They actually uncovered something.
Well,
there.
that's
Apparently,
wait.
Apparently, Team Cherry has a history of ARG stuff, so
Wait, so the picture was uploaded April 2nd, 2024, and just the metadata showed it as April 2nd, 2024.
Yeah, or the first time it appeared on the internet, or something like the whatever data they were able to find on that.
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking, like,
understand
did they know there was a direct coming a year in advance? Like, holy cow.
No. They essentially they just found a picture that was uploaded on that date and just put it in their LinkedIn profile as a hint. Like a few months prior. That's essentially what they did.
That's some next level trolling. That's awesome.
That was so funny, and I'm just like, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard.
I love it. I love it so much.
Yeah.
And I've never even played those games. I love the culture behind some of these games and the fandoms and how absolutely rabid they are. And I get to sit there and watch like a boy at a zoo.
Yeah. I love the first Hollow Knight. I will play Silksong. I have not been holding my breath for Silksong personally.
No, I've been kind of like through like residual like internet observing. Like I don't really know. I'm not as invested, but you can't help but hear about the Silksong. It's just one of those things that memes that gets around, kind of like Half-Life 3 and stuff. So that was big. We listed a bunch of other games. They didn't have Red Dead 2, like we said. I was thinking they would have Halo, but they haven't. And maybe that rumor is just completely bunk. Like they're not actually going to bring Halo to any other systems, and people are just I don't know. People just, who knows where these rumors come from. I'm trying to think. There was a few other games. I mean, there's a lot of games, but none that really stood out to me is like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that came to Switch 2. I was like, yeah, cool. I'm glad they're bringing those games.
Yeah, there were a few ones that I hadn't seen before that looked like they were cooperative. Like there's one about like 4 kids being stranded on an island. I can't remember the title of it.
Oh, you mean the one that the video got stuck at?
Yeah, exactly, that one. And I was like, oh, this might be, potentially, depending on like how complicated the game is, that might be something my wife and I can play, because I'm always on the lookout for co-op indies that are kind of unique. Mm-hmm. And I sort of liked what I saw there, so I'd want to investigate that more. But yeah, largely, I personally wasn't super interested in most of the third-party stuff, but I know there is a market for it, and I'm glad that Nintendo's getting that.
Well, I'm glad Split Fiction's coming, because I'll probably try and play that. That looks like a fun game. It'd be nice if they came. I know they have It Takes Two on Switch. I'm hoping maybe they bring like an updated version to Switch 2 so it runs better. But it'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see how many of those games get upgraded. Speaking of, great transition here.
Yes.
Switch 1 upgrades. I knew we kind of hoped it would happen, but there was not really any signs necessarily. I mean, it was like the rumor of a Breath of the Wild updated version, but that was literally all we had to go on. And the 60 FPS in Xenoblade, which didn't even make an appearance at the Direct. So, but it was really good to see that, yes, they are actually, in fact, coming out with ways to upgrade these old Switch games. Some of them, which people probably don't know this, are free upgrades. They're just some of the games, like I think Mario Odyssey has some free, like some of them, just a lot of, I don't know, maybe it wasn't Odyssey, I had a list, but a lot of games, they're just going to get updates just for performance improvements. Like Scarlet and Violet is getting performance.
Wait, seriously? They actually are? Oh
yeah,
my gosh.
Free updates for Switch 2. So they'll actually run like they're supposed to on Switch 2. But then there's the ones that are paid for because they're more than just updates. And some people don't realize that because they're like, oh, I'm just paying for HD, resolution and frame rate. No. There's except for the Pokemon ZA, that seems to be the only thing you're paying for in the upgrade is basically the correct performance of the game. So.
Yeah, the state of Pokemon is honestly kind of shameful. But
yeah.
And saying that as someone who buys pretty much every Pokemon release, so I'm I clearly I like it enough that I continue to buy it. But and so I love this approach. So I think my understanding is we've sort of gotten a sense. I'm not exactly sure where the information came from, but on the pricing of the upgrades, which I actually feel is relatively fair for what you're getting. I was worried it was going to be something like a $25 upgrade. Um, Maybe I'm wrong. I had heard that it
So
was going to.
I've been
Okay.
watching a ton of YouTube videos on this, and apparently, this is all in Japan pricing because Japan is the only one that seems to have any kind of pricing on any of this stuff at the moment. But some of them are like, if you do the conversion, it's like $6, $7 to $10. So people are saying think
Okay.
it'll be like $10 to $15, but then they're saying like the Kirby one is closer to $20. So they might fluctuate based on what you get. So Kirby looks like it's a whole expansion pack. It's not just
Yeah.
performance. You're getting DLC additional content. So in that case, I'm like, okay, $20 to literally add like another 30 to 40% to the game. If that's what they're adding, it looks like it's a pretty meaty extra. That's
Hmm.
cool. And you get the performance improvements. Things like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, which you can get included in the expansion pass, but if you want to pay for them, is a little bit more of just performance updates. Then they have the mobile app additions. That's the additional content that comes with that. So it's not really like in-game content, but it's something. But I think that stuff will be cheaper. And probably
Yeah.
I'm hoping the Pokemon one too is like maybe just a $5 to $10 upgrade since it's just a performance improvement. But who knows?
Yeah. So I think largely that sounds actually relatively fair to me. Like for example, just to compare, like if I don't own the DLC for Breath of the Wild, as I've said to you many times, I would like to. It's on my list. I wanted to see what sort of happens in the Switch Direct. If they offered that, let's say that there was never Breath of the Wild DLC, and they came out with this update, and they're like, by the way, you get Master Mode and all this other stuff. This one's 30. Tears of the Kingdom is 10 or whatever, or this one's 20 and Tears of the Kingdom's 10, something like that. I'd be like, okay, that seems more fair to me. So I'm definitely interested in both the Zelda upgrades. The Tears of the Kingdom, I just don't even own the game right now. So I would just go straight for the upgrade version, like just the full package. Um, and honestly, like I'm looking forward to it. I think that's going to be great. Um, as fun and beautiful as those games are, like I'd love to see them look even better. But I think that the big story with this is Kirby, which you mentioned, like getting the upgrade pass or the like the expansion pack, like that opens up an avenue for older Switch games to get sort of the Wii U to Switch upgrade treatment, sort of like Pikmin 3 to Pikmin 3 Deluxe, for example. And that means there's a potential avenue for Pikmin 4 to get DLC.
Pikmin mentioned. Here we go.
Yeah. All right, check that off the list. Um,
It's on the bingo
but no,
card.
I think that actually is like a really cool revelation about it. Like it is not always just a graphical upgrade, but sometimes it is content. And Forgotten Land is already a pretty meaty game if you want 100% it. Um, that I'm very happy to see that's happening.
Yeah. It was good to see that. And kind of like Jamboree as well. There's the ones that are just updates, and then there's the ones that are legit like expansion packs as well. And I'm happy to see that. And I agree. I hope we see a Pikmin 4 expansion, like with upgraded, like 60 FPS with higher resolution, all that stuff. And I think it could happen. I think they're going to actually like trickle these out the way they do everything with like the music, with the NSO. They're going to trickle out these Switch 1 like update packs to kind of keep people knowing about their games, and kind of like on the Wii how they had those deluxe games like the Pikmin 1 and 2 with the Wii version, and they had Mario Sluggers, I think, Wii version. They had all these Wii versions that kind of came out that kind of kept the brand alive, but they didn't make a specific game of that for the Wii. I could see that with the Switch where they do that, but they're getting the big ones out of the way first. One of them being Metroid Prime 4, which kind of surprised me. And maybe I shouldn't have been, because Metroid just isn't the big franchise that Nintendo wants to promote. They'd rather promote Mario and Donkey Kong and Pokemon. But yeah, they barely talked about it. It's still actually legitimately just a Switch 1 game, and they're just going to do some patches to it to make it a little bit better on Switch 2, but it's not going to have a Switch 2. Like, we were hoping it was going to promote the controls of the Switch 2. It was going to promote the hardware of the Switch 2. It's like, no, it's a Switch 1 game. And
yeah, that's... Oh, I was just going to say, I think that's where my predictions really missed the mark on what we got. I thought it was going to showcase the mouse controls. Weirdly, they showed like almost like a tech demo game you got to like pay for, where you just like walk around as a little guy exploring the Joy-Cons, but like to sort of show off some of that stuff. But I don't know, like I sort of was disappointed, as Metroid is one of my top two like franchises. You know, it goes Pikmin, then Metroid, and so I was kind of disappointed that we didn't get a little bit more with that. And we still don't even have a release date, man.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. There's not even a release date. You'd think they would at least have that. Even and because we thought, oh, they didn't show the release date because it's going to be this. It's going to release at the same time as the Switch 2, so they got to do it during the Switch 2 Direct. No, so here's my theory now is it's just going to drop the release date through that Nintendo Today app. Yep. They're just going to one day drop and be like, oh yeah, by the way, it's coming out in May something. Yeah. I honestly think it might come out. There's a chance it could come out. Well, I don't know. I feel like they would have talked about the release date by now, but like get it out before the Switch 2 launches, man. Just like it just seems crazy because once the Switch 2's out, that game's not gonna. I don't know. Maybe that's one of their winter titles because their late year outlook looks pretty empty. The only I think winter game I saw for this year was the Hyrule Warriors game. I think is a winter game.
Yeah.
So
maybe it's an October release. If I remember correctly, Dread was an October release.
Yeah, that's true. It probably could be in October. That sounds about right. So that's crazy that we'll have the Switch 2 before Metroid Prime 4 is even out, and it's still a Switch 1 game. So, but yeah, I'm still looking forward to that game. It still looks amazing, and I'm glad that they are doing some performance enhancements for the Switch 2. It's insane that they're going to have that game running at 4K 60 frames per second.
Yeah, that's nuts. That's absolutely crazy.
I
mean, it's retro.
Yeah, it is retro. And obviously it's a Switch 1 game, so it shouldn't be that surprising, but it's also like, the game's going to look so good. And or 1080p, 120 frames per second is insane. I'll probably run it at 4K most of the time because I think 60, I've played all the Prime games at 60 and it's totally fine. I don't feel like I'm going to win more games with 120 frames. I'll probably try it out because the screen supports it and my TV supports it, but I do like it when games look prettier on my TV, and I play mostly docked. So I think if I was playing handheld, I might actually use the 120 hertz function just because at that small of a screen you wouldn't really notice as much between 720 and 1080. But yeah, so I'm looking forward to the game. I just wish it got more love. But they are showcasing it at the Treehouse tomorrow. So it was one of the games they listed. So I will be on the lookout for that. I do want to see more of the gameplay. I want to see more of the visuals. I'm hoping we get some direct feed of it so we can see what it looks like.
They may drop the release date tomorrow then.
That's what I'm thinking.
After they show off the footage, they're just like, oh, by the way, this is coming out in October of 2029.
Okay, do you remember? So when Metroid Prime 4 was originally announced, and it wasn't even in the main press release, right? It was after they'd finished their stage show at E3 that they just casually said, "Oh, by the way, Samus Returns is coming to 3DS."
Yeah,
like they didn't. It wasn't even in their showcase. They're just like it was just like a side note. Everyone's like, "Wait, what?"
Yeah, that's crazy to me. Like, why would you not have that? Like, why would you not be like, here's Metroid Prime 4 is coming, whatever, and here's what you can play in the meantime or whatever.
Yeah, that's a brand new Metroid game. Why would you just brush that under the rug? So I could see that them doing that to Prime 4, where they just like, oh, by the way, here's the release date, and here's the price, and yeah.
It's so crazy.
So,
but I don't know. Like, I guess it depends on what else in it. Like, I'm really interested to see the Treehouse footage tomorrow.
I just hope it sells okay. I mean, I know I don't expect it to sell Zelda levels, but I just want it to be the best-selling Metroid game, so that they just know they need to make more of those. So,
I would love that. What I want is Metroid to at least continue selling around Dread levels. Maybe increase, but I want to get them fairly regularly, and I specifically want to get this whatever, because that Retro is not thinking Prime 4 only. They're thinking a whole trilogy, And so I want to see it through. I want to get all three of those. And, if it goes dormant after that again, like that would be awful, but at least we would like get the three. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So also I think that the chances of getting Metroid Prime 2 and 3 remastered have gone down significantly because they announced GameCube NSO. And that's insane to me that they actually did it.
Yeah, that is. I mean, we had discussed like, oh, maybe there's some limitations, and who knows, maybe they do manage it the way that we have sort of suggested, where you have to download the games first or whatever, and they're rebranding the NSO stuff too. It's like Nintendo Classics or something now.
Yeah, I did notice that. That's okay. That hurts hearing GameCube as a classic, but keep going.
Yeah, I know, right? But I think it's hilarious that they specifically chose to show Wind Waker and F-Zero GX. Like that's what they opened with, and it's like the two games that have been rumored to be like just remasters, just waiting in the wings, are getting instead the more or less inferior GameCube just ports. Now, granted, they say they're a couple graphical improvements, nothing amazing, just like probably they upped the resolution, changed the aspect ratio or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is cool that finally we have F-Zero, which is funny because F-Zero soundtrack like dropped yesterday on the Nintendo Music app, which is kind of funny. But now we've got F-Zero X, F-Zero GX, the Game Boy Advance games, and also like F-Zero 99. So like Switch weirdly has, or I guess Switch 2 rather, weirdly is going to have the most F-Zero games on it.
I think it has all of them, doesn't it? Basically.
I think so.
Yeah, except for maybe the arcade version, but
yeah. Isn't that kind of weird?
Well, it's also going to have all the Luigi's Mansion games. It's going to have all the Pikmin games. It's going to have everything. But I think so. I have a theory as to why they showed off Wind Waker and why they showed off F-Zero GX. And this is just maybe me being super hopeful, but they want to show off the GameCube NSO. But if they just release those HD remasters, then why would you go back and play the originals? So they're bringing out the originals to kind of draw attention to the games. They're just included in if you're already paying with the expansion pass, cool, it's an extra perk, right? And you go back and play those games. And it's like, oh, cool, those were fun. And, there were some issues and whatever because they were old games, but they're fun. And then like a year or two later, they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, here's Wind Waker, 4K. Here's, F-Zero GX or just a brand new F-Zero game. But they're Nintendo does this where they kind of prime people, no pun intended, Metroid Prime. They try to prime the players with the franchises, get them kind of comfortable, because we, as older players, are like, oh, we remember those games, but there's so many younger players that never played those games. So they're trying to kind of prime them with like, here's the older games, go play them. And hopefully the younger people go and play them, be like, wow, those games were really cool. Those were super fun. And then when the new versions come out, they're like, dude, I got to play the new one. I love this game. And obviously the old players will do it, but trying to create new old players, if that makes any sense, trying to almost create new nostalgia by giving them the old games so that they want to play the new remastered ones. Because those are the two games where like, well, Wind Waker already has an HD remake and F-Zero like needs it badly. That just seems like just get everyone kind of playing that, and then a year or two from now be like, oh yeah, here you go. And then we'll just start looking at every game that comes out on the GameCube NSO as like, okay, eventually there's going to be an HD remaster.
Chibi Robo?
Yeah, Chibi Robo mentioned. Dude, some of the games on that list, I'm like, those are some like, those are games you don't hear about.
I saw that and I'm like, Leighton's going to be eating good. When those come out, like you are going to play Chibi Robo and your kids are going to become Chibi Robo fans. I guarantee it.
Yeah, and what's funny is I've seen so many people be like, it's so ridiculous that you have to pay for that through the NSO and you can't buy the games, yada, yada. I'm like, look, do you know how hard it is to go and find those games now and play them? And like, unless you go the pirating route and get the ROMs, if you want to legitimately play those games, good luck. I'm just like, everyone's been claiming Nintendo needs to make these games playable again, and here they're doing it, and people are like, oh, I don't want to pay for it. And I get that it's a subscription, and it'd be better to buy the game, but let's just be real. When you buy digitally, you don't really own the game anyway, so at the very least, like, you're not rebuying the game over and over again. You're paying a nominal fee for a lot of games, and yeah, I guess if you're not playing any of the NSO games, you probably feel like you're getting ripped off. But I'm the kind of person, I didn't grow up with those consoles. So it is so cool for me to finally get to go back and play those games that I wanted to play as a kid. I didn't get to play GameCube games very much. So I'm going to be playing like all of those games. I'm definitely buying that GameCube controller. I'm buying a few of them because I want to be able to use those for Smash Brothers, and I want to be able to play all those GameCube games with the correct controller. So, especially with analog triggers. So I think it's great service for people like me, and I'm sure lots of young players who've never got to experience those games and are never going to go out and buy used copies of a game because everyone's holding on to those games now anyway, right? If you have them, you probably aren't going to. Yeah, exactly. Ryan's got all of them. He's not selling those. So
no shot.
So yeah, like how are you supposed to play
foreshadowing, by the way.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get into that. But I'm happy. I'm very happy they're doing it. I think also there's a slight chance that we could make an appearance down the road because they kind of did that with NSO before where they had certain systems at the beginning, then they added N64, they added GBA. I could see DS, maybe 3DS, and Wii coming to, I think at that point it's over. I don't think they're going to bring Wii U. I think that'd be silly. Most of the Wii U games came to Switch, but I could see, maybe they could do it, but I just don't see Wii U as being a classics,
No.
system. But I could see Wii and DS and 3DS coming.
I was just thinking about this after you mentioned like Wii, like hypothetically, like, in order to do the Wii, you need to more or less have the pointer controls, which granted could be mouse. It could just be mouse controls.
Mm-hmm.
But what if one other control option was that the camera also has the ability to see, like the camera that they sell has the ability to see just slightly outside of the visible spectrum, and the like controllers actually give off like a signal that it's able to pick up, and you're able to use it as a Wii remote. I don't know.
Who knows? I mean, they could also just make a slide-on attachment that connects to the Joy-Con or something. I mean, I'm sure they'll come out with a Wii remote, classic Wii remote that connects to, who knows what they'll do. But I could see the Wii being a very popular one because I think more people were connected to the Wii than they were with the GameCube. So, but yeah, this is a step in the right direction. I'm glad that they're doing it, just adding more value to us. And then they didn't. I mean, I haven't seen a price increase for NSO. They probably will eventually have one because everything's going up in price. Foreshadowing. But I'm just glad they're adding value to it. And at the moment, they haven't added additional cost. I mean, they've added value by giving me upgraded versions of Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom. They're giving me value by giving me GameCube. I'm sure there'll be additional things that are going to add value to it down the road. So I'm happy with that. God, what else is there? There's so many little things. Is there any games that we missed, like first party, you feel like we didn't talk about? There was that wheelchair game.
Yeah, there's that wheelchair game. That looks kind of interesting. I didn't show Katie, my wife, the trailer, but I kind of like the idea. I kind of want to see a bit more of it. I don't know. Like, maybe that'll be good.
It could be more fun than we were giving it credit for. It didn't give the best first impression.
No, I don't think so. But one thing I did want to touch on is the Pro controller, which I thought actually looked really good. But specifically, I like the back buttons.
Mm-hmm. It's an actual Pro controller now.
Yeah, it actually looks pretty good. I was talking with my wife about it. I'm like, yeah, we're getting a Switch 2, at least one. Eventually, I'll probably get one for her. But with the download and play functionality, you almost don't need to for most of it. I think if we're gonna play some co-op game, like not all of them, but some of them, like my wife could just use her Switch 1
if it's a Switch 1 game, not a Switch 2 game.
Yeah. But who knows? Maybe some of the Switch 2 games will be able to have that feature. I don't know. Maybe you read something I didn't. But I walked away from that like some games are just going to be able to have this ability. I was saying, like, I don't know, like, I don't particularly want to, like, go out and buy 2 Joy-Cons for her to use when I could just get a Pro controller. And then eventually, like, if she gets her own, Switch 2, then, okay, yeah, like, we just have a Pro controller and she has her own Joy-Cons. But I wouldn't want, like, an extra pair of Joy-Cons just sitting around personally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe when eventually there's a Ryan Jr., then maybe it might be useful. But.
Well, I have a lot of people who play in my house, so I do need to get at least 2 Pro controllers and then probably another pair of Joy-Cons just to make sure that everyone can play. Because I don't make my kids play with the Joy-Con sideways unless the game forces you, like Mario Party. but they usually play with 2 Joy-Cons together, and then me and my wife get the Pro controllers. So yeah, I mean, that's the way to go. And my wife plays a lot of time on the Switch after the kids gone to bed, and so now I love the fact that I know other systems have had this. I know, but it's great that Nintendo finally put a headphone jack on the controller. So, and we've been able to find ways to get around that. Our TV has Bluetooth, so we just Bluetooth directly, our headphones directly to the TV and just do it that way. And you can technically Bluetooth your headphones to the Switch currently, but having the headphone jack is just nice because all our headphones have headphone jacks and we don't have to worry about pairing and battery life. We can just hook it into the controller and just play that way. Super underrated feature. I bet you it will also be used to create like a headset for microphone if you don't want to use the microphone on the system. Because not everyone has their system in a place that, the audio can be heard. So if someone still wants to do voice chat, they'll probably have a headset option for the controller. But I do love the extra buttons too. I'm curious what kind of ways you can utilize that in games like Smash Brothers, like any fighting game, or my wife plays Stardew Valley. She's trying to figure out if there's a way she can hotkey it to certain functions in the game. So, but yeah, I'll be buying 2 of those and the Joy-Cons just because I need that. But yeah, because also I need 4 Joy-Cons in case we have to play a 4-player Joy-Con specific game like Mario Party. So
yeah, there are a couple other first-party games I think we should touch on before.
Yeah, there's one we've been kind of dancing around too, but well, I'm curious which one you're considering.
Kirby Air Riders.
Yes. Oh, that was such a fun surprise.
Yeah, that was really cool. I was stoked to see that.
Did you play the original?
I played a lot of Kirby. Yeah, I have it. I actually literally have it in the other room. I haven't gotten my wife to play it yet, but I watched Madry Bread. I don't know if you've ever seen his videos. They did a run through one of the modes a few years back. I'm like, I kind of want to go through and like play that from scratch with Katie. And then we just never sat down and did it yet. But maybe in the future. But like getting a sequel like 25 years later is awesome.
That's insane. And having Sakurai back at the helm for that game again is so cool. I knew he was working on a game because I'd watched a lot of his YouTube videos, and he kind of talked about how he'd been working on a game for a few years that he couldn't talk about. And I had a pretty sinking suspicion it wasn't Smash Brothers. So seeing it be Kirby Air Ride, which then does lead me to wonder, is he going to be helming Smash Brothers again? And if not, then are they working on it? But that aside, it looks really good. I think it'll be really fun, and it's coming out this year.
Yeah,
which is crazy.
It is coming out this year.
Yeah,
I don't remember the release date. It just went so fast.
It didn't have a release date, but it said 2025. So it's one of the games coming.
Well, maybe that's the holiday.
Yeah, because it's here's the thing: the only Switch 2 exclusive games, first party Switch 2 exclusive games that we saw were Mario Kart World.
Mm-hmm.
The Zelda Age of Imprisonment, what did we just say? Kirby Air
Riders,
and the new DK game.
Yeah, which is the last game that I specifically wanted to hit on because that looks awesome to me.
Oh yeah, and we'll get to. Oh, there were a few others. There was the little demo, the tutorial game that they were going to charge you for, and then there was the wheelchair game. But
yeah,
I think outside of that, everything else was either a Switch 2 multi-plat game or some update game or something. But like, correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think there was any other first-party games like Switch 2 exclusive first-party games.
No, exclusive, no. But you could sort of think of, especially like Kirby and the Forgotten Lands DLC as being sort of like a remaster with expansion, sort of in the vein of like a Wii U to Switch release. Not quite, but you could sort of think of it that way. I don't really count it, but at the same time, I think you can't just brush it aside.
That's true. That and Jamboree definitely added a lot of extra content. So yeah, I guess I'm not included just because they aren't full new games. Like they're games you can play on the Switch right now, but obviously the additional content you can't. So kind of like what Elden Ring and the what's the DLC that came out?
Shadow of the Erd Tree.
Shadow of the Erd Tree.
It's like to finish.
It's it's a whole new experience, but it's still expansion to Elden Ring.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, let's talk about DK for a bit. That was both of us had, or at least I did. I had 3D Mario as like almost locked in. It was my safe bet. Yeah. I was like, "There's no way they're not showing 3D Mario." And then Nate the Hate came out of nowhere. I was like, "I don't know, guys. I don't think it's gonna happen." And we're like, "He's right about a lot of stuff, but there's no way he's right about this." And he was, gosh, that guy is a
He was
prophet.
right. Yeah. Well, and honestly, the fact that he's predicting an Oblivion remake shadow drop for April, like, it has a lot of credence in my mind now.
Oh
I'm
my
looking forward to
gosh.
that, but that's for another time. The DK game looks awesome. DK's sort of been rebranded. It's a new old look. However you want to put it. I kind of like it with the vibe that they're giving with the game. It's
Hmm.
different from I never really played through any of the Donkey Kong Country games. I played a tiny bit of Donkey Kong 64. I'm not a Donkey Kong fan. I looked at that and I'm like, that looks awesome. Probably will pick that up. Almost certainly will pick that up, barring anything weird. Like I'm getting that game. It looks awesome.
Yeah. It has that. Well, it clearly looks like it's made by the same people that made Mario Odyssey. The style,
Hmm.
the engine even looks very similar. Um, yeah, it just looked fun. It has that charm. It has that personality. I mean, boy, it's so expressive. That's something I
Hmm.
would say about a lot of the Nintendo first party stuff that I'm seeing is they're leaning heavily into the animation side of their characters and making them way more expressive and way more of characters that you can feel and get connected to. And Ben DK, I've never seen him more expressive than ever. And the gameplay, yeah, looks super fun. Like just the amount of like control and freedom you have to just move around. And I've watched the trailer a few times now, and I know it's not Minecraft, but it has a very Minecraft-esque in the sense that it seems like a lot of the world is destructible.
Yeah, I noticed that. It sort of looks like you could just destroy anything you want. I assume there's a limit to it.
Of
I
course.
assume at some point you would either hit some sort of bedrock or that you only get to have so many alterations to the environment, and then it sort of starts filling in behind you, maybe like further away from you, like, oh yeah, the ground just sort of goes back to normal. But I think like you could do a lot of damage if you really wanted to, and like really destroy stuff, and that I think that's actually really cool.
Yeah, it changes the way you
And
approach each level, and I'm curious to see how they approach like boss fights with it.
mhm, agreed. I would like to sort of see a little bit. I think it's going to be one of the games at the Treehouse. I want to see a little bit more of it. If it is at the Treehouse, I'll
I think it
definitely
is. I
watch
was just
it.
trying to think if it was. I think you're right. I think it was listed there. I've seen I've watched the direct so many times now from different YouTubers. I've kind of skimmed through it because it's like parts I know, like, oh, I don't need to see this. But I'm looking at all the different YouTubers reacting to different parts, and I've seen that Donkey Kong trailer so many times. Um,
Hmm.
I've watched the last one I just watched was Donkey's very, very, very quick reaction to everything, which is hilarious. Always watch Donkey.
Yeah,
Um,
I'll have to watch that.
but it looks like a really fun game, and it's coming out in July. They actually gave it a date.
Yeah,
It's one of the few games that got a
and
date.
which means that Mario Kart really only gets about a month before DK drops, which is kind of cool. Like I'm on board.
Yeah, it did an inverse
Um,
of what I expected. I thought Mario Kart would be the 1 month out, and there'd be some other game as the flagship. But no, Mario Kart's the flagship, and DK gets a super awesome game a month later.
yeah, which is phenomenal. I can't wait to play it. I think that looks fantastic. My wife is a huge fan of Donkey Kong 64. What I'm sort of wondering is, is it fundamentally a collectathon again, sort of in the vein of Odyssey where you had to get the coins and you had to get the stars, or are you doing something else? Like, do you have to like accomplish missions? Do you have to beat bosses? Like, what do you got to do? Like, what is the purpose of the game? We see the destruction and that's great. And don't get me wrong, I'll have fun with that. But what is the fundamental like premise that you're trying to do? That's what I'm kind of like interested in, because I think that really changes how you leverage the destructible environment.
I think that trailer definitely gave us a lot, like as far as the style and the music, and like it gave us a ton of stuff all at once. But that's the one thing I don't think it really gave us was what are we aiming for. But I think that's stuff that we'll find out, and I don't think it's gonna
Yeah.
be a huge deal. I think it's gonna be more objective based. It probably will be collectibles because that's just how it works with Mario and DK games. But
Yeah.
um, I don't know. I just love the freedom. I just love that Nintendo is leaning into the hardware, not like we need to make our games look as realistic as possible, but instead leaning again, like they always do, into crazy, amazing art style and taking that hardware and be like, we want to make all the performance go into making the gameplay more fun. So with Donkey Kong, we're making so much of the world destructible, and we don't even know what the limit is. It might be insane. And that's where they're going with it, because the game does look good, but it's not like they went for hyper Unreal Engine graphics with it. It definitely has a style. There's definitely like certain textures you're like, okay, but I think they're focusing on the world, interactability, the fluid, frame rate. Seems like frame rate was a big thing. They really focus on frame rate, which was really cool. Hopefully that's a big, thing that they do throughout the whole Switch 2 era. But no, it looks really good. Final game, we haven't really talked about it. It was the first game they showed, and it was Mario Kart World. Cool to get the name. I was wrong. It wasn't Mario Kart Road Trip, but it was kind of close. It had the same vibe. I was right about the whole open world aspect of it. Interesting game. Yeah.
We basically called you heard it here first, obviously nobody else ever predicted an open world Mario Kart. But no, and then I think I had like casually suggested driving between tracks and stuff, so it's kind of nice to see that like some of what we got from the first trailer actually is kind of representative. Like the just a small trailer, we were actually able to get a little bit of information from that was true, but in such a way that it didn't really spoil it. So that was kind of nice. So I think there are sort of two discussions here. I think there's a discussion of the gameplay, and then the discussion of stuff we learned afterward. I would like to focus on the gameplay first. Do you agree?
Yes, I agree. Let's start with that, and we're going to work away. Everyone who probably knows what we're going to get to, but you'll see. But let's just focus on the game.
Yeah, so I sort of, one of my predictions was that this was going to be a fundamentally different Mario Kart. It's definitely a fundamentally different Mario Kart. The sort of, if you had to pick like one gimmick, it's the open world. If you had to pick one racing gimmick, it's sort of the grinding / like wall running aspect of it. And then I am imagining that different weather conditions are going to change bits about the kart. Like if it's raining, for example, maybe you drift at a different, like you don't quite have as much traction, for example. I could see them doing that. I don't know if that's true or not. But it seems like they are changing up the game in, really interesting ways. I didn't really see much Zero G. I don't know if they had any in the trailer.
I didn't see any.
I saw the flying. You were floating on the water for a bit, so maybe you can't go underwater anymore. I don't know. But
I kind of like that, though, because I think it was kind of cool how it turns into a jet ski, so you kind of have almost like a wave race built into Mario Kart now. Yeah. And then the flying looks like it was less of a glider above you and more like your actual car is turning into an airplane now. So I'm curious if that has any effect at all on the game, or if that's just a design change. And then there's snow. It was the snowmobile. I don't know. It'd be interesting how that affects everything. I could see the weather effects being rain for like less traction, ice for even less traction, wind which blows your cart a certain direction, so you're like constantly having to correct. I don't know. Like maybe maybe if it's really hot, your tires have extra traction because they're stickier.
So, they start melting.
Right.
The car overheats. You have to get out, and you have to like pop the hood and just sort of stare at it for a little while.
Yeah. Right. That'd be funny. Yeah, try to find a gas station, try and call AAA, deal with fixing the car, get towed.
It's an open world, man.
Yeah, no, and so it looks really fun. I mean, the open world thing is kind of cool, though. I think that the free roaming thing looks like it could get pretty boring pretty quick, like unless they fill the world with more stuff. The co-op thing is kind of cool. You can explore it with friends, but I'm like, are you really going to have fun like just looking at the world? Unless, there's lots of cool collectibles maybe. So like you work as a team to kind of collect stuff. That's where I could see them making the open world thing more interesting, is that instead of earning coins and like unlocking cart stuff that way, is you actually like are incentivized to explore the world and like find it. Kind of like how in Tears of the Kingdom, you're incentivized to find all the chests which have like certain outfits and stuff. Some of them are more just because they're nostalgia bait, and then some of them are legitimately good piece of equipment that help you in the game. And I could see in Mario Kart they do something like that, where if you explore certain areas, you get maybe some cooler kart customizations or cooler outfits, because they showed a lot of costumes too. The 24-player thing is going to be absolutely nuts. I do like that they're adding more modes, though, like basically a Battle Royale mode.
Which you called?
Yep, I did. I thought there's no way they're not doing at least a mode like that. I do love, the fact that the world connects. I kind of hope that to a certain degree, though, they do have, like, as with all the modes, it's just a classic mode. Like, for those who just want to play a couple levels and don't want to have to just constantly be driving. Like, some people like the downtime between the maps to just stop and just breathe. But if, like, you finish a race and you just have to stay racing to the next track, and it's just, like, an hour of racing, could get a little draining.
Well, and one thing that I sort of want to know is in between races, because like you start out a race and you're all grouped together, and by the end of the race, the person that's in 12th, they're really far behind, like minutes and minutes behind, typically. With 24, it's going to get crazier. Like the Gaussian distribution is going to be nuts. Like, do you just start the race when you get to the next one? So then, like, the time just adds on, and then eventually the guy that's in 24th or whatever, like, finishes an hour later? Like, how is that even going to work? Like, do you just have to go there and wait? Like, I don't know. Like, maybe the person who finishes the match or the lap last, they, like, get a speed boost and then they catch up to everyone else. Like, I don't know. Like, I want to see more of that. Like more about that and, like, understand exactly what they're aiming for.
I think it's like a placement thing. So, like, if you're the last one to that track, you get placed in the back. So
Yeah.
if the 23rd person shows up, you just instantly get warped there because we can't wait for you. But I don't know. It's a weird. I think it's going to be a timing thing. I think you're right, where it's just like your best time is added. Because otherwise, yeah, you're just waiting for everybody. Who knows? They've obviously had to have thought of something with the balancing of this because it's crazy. Like, blue shells have got to be like nerfed to a certain degree because you can't have 5 people at the back all shooting blue shells.
You have one guy that's like, 3 or 4 courses down the path, like he's way ahead of everyone else, and the guy in 24th gets a blue shell and throws it, and it just hits him on a different track across the planet, flying faster than the speed of light. Like, come on.
Yeah, I'm sure they've thought of this stuff, but it's just crazy to imagine because it breaks the convention to what we know about Mario Kart. But yeah, it should be fun. I hope they have battle mode still. Like, I know with the original Mario Kart 8, they just had a garbage battle mode, so I hope they still have a decent battle mode. 24-player battle mode actually sounds kind of crazy fun.
It
like,
does.
The racing is
like
chaotic, but battle mode could be fun if they got big enough maps for it. So, yeah, the game, fun, looked great, packed full of content.
Oh, God.
But
yeah, I think so. One thing I want to touch on is we are getting we actually know when the next direct is, which is April 17th, and it's a Mario Kart specific direct. That tells me there's a lot more to the game.
Yeah,
than we know of. I think this is actually a much bigger game. And reflecting on that, this is why I'm glad that we had the time to sort of reflect on it and wait for some of the stuff to come out, is because I think that puts the next part in a little bit better context if, indeed, there actually is a lot more to this game.
Yeah, and just before we move on to that subject, I think
Sure.
that there's a lot more in general that we don't know because they packed this direct so much. I think there's going to be a lot of directs between now and launch, or at least around launch, because, again, the last half of the year looks pretty dry, and I think there's more games. I still think they could be a 3D Mario game. Call me crazy, but DK's coming out in July, so Mario usually comes out in, September or November, I think, somewhere in there. I don't know. I just feel like there could still be a Mario game. It would be kind of crazy to have 2 major 3D, platformer games in the same year, but it also does seem crazy not to have a Mario game at the end of this year. Anyway, point for that. So now let's move into the hot topic, the one we've been dancing around, and that is the price, the thing that Nintendo refused to talk about in any way, shape, or form in this direct, and then suddenly you found it all out by just going on their website and learning about it. And for a lot of people, including us, maybe not to the same degree, I think a lot of people really sucked the wind out of their sails, but it definitely was a downer. I think the console price, which I predicted 100% right, is not as much of a issue for me. I know some people are upset about it. I think it's pretty fair considering all the specs they showed. 1080p, 120 hertz, HDR, with 4K support. It comes with a dock. Everyone's comparing it to the Steam Deck as if it should be apples to apples. And I'm like, you forget that this thing has a high resolution display with a higher refresh rate, is going to have better performance. I know some people probably will argue me on that, but I think that it's probably going to perform better because it's more optimized for gaming. Comes with a dock, comes with 2 controllers, and you consider it just 1 controller if you want, but either way, it's coming with a controller, all for $50 over the cheapest Steam Deck you can get. I mean, to me, that seems like not that crazy of a value proposition for a brand new piece of hardware.
Well, and I think just breaking down to the raw economics of it as well, who is going to look at a $400 console and say, I really want this because of all these games that are on there, and then say, oh, I'm no longer interested because they're $50 more? It's not a lot of people who are going to do that, to be honest.
Yeah.
Maybe some, but like most people, like don't get me wrong, I would love to have had $50 off of it. Like I save money, habitually. My wife and I are very, very frugal. But with this, I recognize like that $50 is not going to stop me from purchasing it. Like
Hmm.
I understand that, and as much as I'd like to have it off, heck, I'd like it to be $200, but I know it's not $200. It's going to be 450, and so we were both team 450 for the longest time. I actually briefly defected to team 500 as soon as they didn't talk about the price, because I'm like, oh wow, maybe it's actually much higher than we expected. No, it's 450. So
But it's
you
kind of
know
500. We were kind of both right because they have a
that's
bundle
true.
with Mario Kart that is 500. And I think that I was listening to Nintendo Forecast. I think that Nintendo wants it to be 500, but they actually conceded down to 450, and they put the Mario Kart bundle out there to kind of like, get people buying the system. But yeah. And also people forget, like they compare it to like a PS5 or a Xbox Series X, and we forget that those systems came out 5 years ago, before a lot of this inflation happened, before a lot of things have changed. Prices have gone up. Chip manufacturing has gotten insane right now. Obviously, there's other political things going on, and so and you saw with the PlayStation 5 Pro, it was $700. That was a huge thing that everyone thought was crazy, and I think that was a sign that when the PS6 and the next Xbox, if there's a next Xbox, but regardless, you're going to be surprised. I think people are going to be like, oh, I think the PS6 could be like $600 or $700.
Yeah,
If it's
it
got to be
wouldn't
more
surprise
powerful
me if
than a
it's
PS5
more.
Pro.
It wouldn't surprise me if it's more. I could totally see it being 800.
Yeah, and I think the game's
I
same
think it'd
thing.
be steep. I think it'd be really hard on the consumer to match that. Like that's the point at which I do think this is very nonlinear, and I do think that there is a curve to this, and at some point people are going to drop off, and it may be around the 800 mark.
Yeah.
But
I don't.
we'll
I,
see.
I think we'll just see a drop in game sales. I think we'll see more people. I don't know what's going to happen, but these console manufacturers have been. And Nintendo's one of the few that hasn't done this. They sell their systems at a profit, but Sony, pretty much, as far as I'm aware, their entire lifespan have always sold their systems at a loss. So you have to imagine their systems cost more than what they're charging. You're just getting lucky because they're hoping to subsidize it with game sales. Well, game sales aren't making the money they used to now because the cost of development's gone so high. And in order for them, a lot of these games to break even, they have to sell at least 7 million copies or 5 to 10 million copies. I think I heard someone saying that one of the Final Fantasy games had to sell at least 5 to 7 million copies just to break even. And that's insane to me. That's a number that, how do you do that, especially at that price point where they're charging only $60 or $70 for a game? We've been just very fortunate, and then those games don't have all the DLC and microtransactions that kind of make up the money. Where a lot of games, like multiplayer games, they make way more. If you think you're paying, a free to play game costs more than $80. Let's just be real. If you're someone who's invested into Fortnite or invested into a lot of these free to play games, over the course of the time you play that game, you're paying more than $80.
On average.
On
On
average.
average.
And I know there's some people like, well, I don't, and I'm one of those people. I remember buying Overwatch for $40, and I never bought a single extra piece of it, and I got my money's worth out of that game. It doesn't exist anymore, but whatever. But other people subsidize it for me, but that's not a good model, in my opinion. I think games should be, you need to pay for what you get of the game, and I also don't like games that come with almost nothing, and then you have to pay for all the extra stuff.
Yeah,
That's where I
I
think
100% agree.
where we're kind of leading with Mario Kart is that, and there's a whole different discussion we're going to get into here, and it's a little scary because I think Nintendo is charging more because they know they can, and in that regard, I'm pretty frustrated with it because it's purely based on we sold this many copies on Switch. If we sold half as that, upping it $10, or it's more than $10, upping it $20 or $30 if you get the physical one, will not make up the money if they sell it 50% of the volume. They need to still sell like 60 or 70% of that volume. So I don't know if they've run the numbers on how they think this is going to work. But it's a crazy number. But again, I do think there's a lot of people screaming saying, I'd love to pay full price for a game if it came with all the content. This could be one of those games where, and Nintendo does tend to do this, is like, we may find out that game just is jam-packed with content. Are we going to put our money where our mouth is and say, look, I'm just happy that, it actually comes with everything. It's not a $60 game that's gutted, so I have to pay $20 to $30 for the DLC later. Some would argue, well, at least I have the choice. I'm like, okay, sure, but I don't know. It feels like if you're getting like less of a game, people are going to complain too. They're going to feel like they're getting ripped off because all the good content was in the DLC. So there's this fine line with developers now trying to figure out where to be and how to, give people what they want, but also still stay in business.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that there's sort of like, I think this is a multifactorial problem, and I'm gonna just like quickly touch on the pillars of what I think are important here. So, the state of modern gaming is terrible. It's toxic. It's not what it used to be. Microtransaction live service games, basically nobody likes these, and it's ultimately just made gaming bad. That I think is not a controversial opinion whatsoever. There's some people who like it. Good for you. Like, I'm glad that there's a thing for you. But I, like you just said, you used to go to your local Walmart, Kmart, Target, whatever, and get a game, and you had everything, and that was it. Then, we got into the 360 era, and I even thought some DLC in the 360 era was like sort of worth it. It's like, okay, you liked what you got, we're gonna offer you some more, and you can pay for it if you like. Fine. And then obviously, as you touched on, things got a little bit shady. I think part of that was development costs ballooning out of control, and then they still locked the game to $60, which in general seemed like a good move at the time, and people were happy, like they wanted to pay $60. And even as inflation continued to rise, as it does at any time, then sort of it's like almost the price of games sort of went down over time, but what you got dramatically decreased. And so ultimately, I think we've got an artificially delayed increase in the price of games. I don't want game prices to increase, but I think if they were to act like any other commodity, an increase in price, it should have happened sooner. If it were to act like any commodity, I think it got artificially depressed by a changing gaming landscape, which nobody liked. And so I think that we were already in a bad situation. Couple that with Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was, for the most part, not a new game. 90% of that content was available during the Wii U. So we actually never got a new Mario Kart in the Switch version. You could argue that the expansion pass was, sure, okay, a bunch of new maps. That was great. We bought it. We had a great time with it. So they've been developing this game for a very, very long time. And I think the question that it always really comes down to fundamentally is the price of the game worth what you are buying, in your opinion? And I think that really is the fundamental question for half of our discussion. I think that there's another half that you and I have specifically touched on, and you mentioned it briefly, and we'll get to it. But in terms of the game itself being $80, let's assume that both the physical and digital prices were $80. They're not, but let's say it was. Is there enough game there to justify that? That's something that the market is going to decide, and that people are going to decide for themselves. And I want to see more before I make that decision for myself. And I think that's why they're holding a direct for it. They didn't, wave the price out there. They put it on the website, but they didn't, talk about it, because I think there actually is a lot more to this game. They've had a ridiculous amount of development time. They've probably sunk a lot of money into it. I want to see what's there before. I don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction to it. So that's sort of my spiel. And that I think that all those weave together to help build up this shock factor of the $80. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm. So now the real challenge is, and I know this is where we kind of had some of our disagreement. Well, I wouldn't say disagreement. I think it's just a different perspective on it.
Yes.
Because I agree with you, but I also see it from both sides of the coin.
Mm-hmm.
Is the fact that, and I believe this is true, I have to confirm this because there's a lot of mixed messages there, but my understanding is that the digital version of the game is $80 and the physical version of the game is $90. And this is where things get a little interesting, because it feels like Nintendo are punishing you for wanting to have a physical copy of your game. And so on one hand, and again, Nintendo decides the pricing on this stuff, so it's not like Nintendo was forced at gunpoint to make the game that price. Like, they could have made it lower, and maybe they probably still would have made a lot of money. I mean, honestly, if they could sell 60 million at $60, they're probably still doing okay. But they've made it more. On on one hand, you could say, like, well, at least Nintendo isn't forcing the digital version to be $90, right? Like, they're not saying, hey, we're going to make sure it's always parity with it, so you're punished for the fact that we lose money on physical games. Nintendo loses they only make like 30 to 40% on their physical copies of games, because between the cost of the actual packaging and the cartridge itself, the shipping, and the actual distribution, the distributors get their own cut. They lose a huge chunk of the money of those games. So, they sell Mario Kart for $60. They make $20 a game, $20 to $30 a game. Whereas they sell it on their digital site, they make $60. So they've brought the digital game down. Now, by that logic, they should be discounting it even more to be digital. So again, I'm not trying to pretend that Nintendo is like this guardian angel company that's looking out for us. No, they're there to make money. But the fact that they're not like, hey, we're just going to make the digital game $90 too, because we're going to make a killing off of this. They're kind of like, hey, Now, I think also it's to incentivize people to buy digital. And you and I have, I don't want to say differing opinions. Like, I guess I'm more lenient towards digital than you are. I'm not going to say that I disagree with you on your points of digital. And actually, I should let you speak because you have your feelings on physical versus digital.
Yeah, so I think, it does come down to, I set up the argument that I did in the previous section so that I could turn it around on myself. That I now have to make the decision, do I want the digital or do I want the physical game? And is the extra $10 worth it to me to have the physical game? That is ultimately the decision. That is how it works in reality, and that's the decision I'm going to have to make. I personally don't like that I have to pay more. I don't like that it ballooned up that much. I was expecting $70. I was expecting $70 when we found out it was going to be $80. I was, interested. Like, now that it's at $90, I don't know whether or not I would buy it. Maybe I go digital. I don't know. But and again, we both had different experiences with this. Like, for me, like, I've had digital games before, and then, servers get shut down, you lose them. Sometimes it gets shut down for an individual game, and it just locks up the game because of terrible DRM policies. Sometimes it's because the eShop goes offline, and I lost Xenoblade Chronicles X this way, and it's because I had it stored on a hard drive, and that hard drive happened to fail, and I just never spent the money to get a new hard drive, which I guess is fundamentally my fault. I don't remember which happened first, the Wii U, because it was fairly recently that I lost it. That particular game, and the only reason why I really emphasize is because we did just get Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, which I'm going to pick up. So I'm going to eat my words and buy the same game twice, but this time I'm getting the physical copy. I wanted the physical copy at the time, but the only one we could find was digital. Anyway, for me, I have right next to me a box of my Game Boy games, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance. Over there, I have my DS games. I can pop those into a DS anytime I want. Could the DS hypothetically fail at some point? Absolutely. But I've replaced electronics before, like parts of electronics before. I've fixed consoles before. I can do it again. With the 3DS, I lost some games when that eShop went offline. I had some experience like trying to move SD cards around. I wasn't successful. Maybe there's a better, more established way to do it that I just didn't do it right. Maybe it is actually easy to keep digital games. But the way that I look at it is that, I have these cartridges. I take, relatively good care of them. I'm not, I don't have them on display or anything. But, I take relatively good care of them. I try to keep them dry and intact and from being crushed and whatever. And I go back and I play old games. And it just doesn't feel comfortable to me that someday these are going to be classics, right? And I'm going to have a kid, and that kid is going to grow up playing Mario Kart. And I don't want there to ever be a time where, because my Switch stops working or something, and we lose the data, the card it was stored on, and, now we're on Switch 7 or whatever, which, is an exaggeration, but, let's just say Nintendo's already moved on, and now we can't access that and share that together. Like, that to me is kind of frustrating, because I sort of want to be able to navigate this on my own terms. And maybe that's selfish of me. But at the same time, I feel like that reality has been taken from us as gamers as people have moved more and more in the digital space. You know, who takes the blame for that? I don't know. Maybe it's shared by everyone. Maybe, is it Steam's fault for really pioneering this and having the sales? Is it, Xbox and PlayStation's fault for following suit? Is it everyone's fault whenever they implement? I don't know. What I know is that, if we had physical copies, I feel more comfortable. I know that you have a different opinion on that, and I would like to, you to be able to share it and to hear it, because I think it's really interesting.
Well, it's funny, as you were talking, it actually dawned on me, because my whole thing was like, and this really comes down to, we both have a Wii U, but you had the issue where you had a data loss on a drive, so you lost games that you could never re-download because the eShop no longer exists. And I'm a data hoarder, so I had multiple backups of my drive, so I've actually moved it to a more modern drive already. So all my games still work, but a thought dawned on me that technically speaking, though, those games are technically locked to that Wii U. So if that Wii U dies, I can't necessarily play those games on a new Wii U if I could somehow get a hold of one. So yeah, that is definitely one of the biggest downsides to digital gaming. And I think what comes down to a digital gaming at the end of the day is always trust. Because, you mentioned Steam, right? We've been downloading games from Steam for like 15 plus years. I mean, Steam started in 2004 with Half-Life 2. Mm-hmm. And we've been, and the reason we feel safe downloading these games, like when was the last time you bought a physical game for a PC?
Oh gosh, Mass Effect 3?
Yeah.
Before I met Katie.
Yeah, a long time ago. So yeah, I still have some old games, but it's hard to even install them now because you don't have a CD drive or anything on your computer. You have to get an external one, and even then it may not work because they're that old. But we trust Valve because they've got a proven track record and they've kept their word and allowed us to keep these games. Not necessarily. There are some games that have actually been pulled from Steam, and there's still issues there, but for the most part, the big games are there. And yeah, so we keep buying these digital games. And the reason we didn't trust Nintendo is because of like the 3DS and the Wii U and this change in hardware and their inability to migrate stuff. Well, the Wii was really where they first started that, and virtual console games and stuff like that. And so if Nintendo can somehow, maybe through this next generation and the generation after that, and I think that's part of the reason Nintendo is moving to digital too, is that Switch 3, do you really think they're going to use the same cartridge? At that point, that cartridge is archaic. It'll come out in 2017. Who knows what year the next system will come out? Like, they need to move to a new cartridge. They can't have two cartridge slots, on the system that run. They're going to have to come up with a new system. Maybe they can stick to the same architecture, hopefully, because ARM seems like it's here to stay. And so all your digital games will move over, and Nintendo kind of wants to keep that digital library going. But yeah, and this isn't not me saying like, oh, don't buy physical games for Switch 2 because you won't be able to play them on your Switch 3. It's like, that's not the point. Like, you just keep your Switch 2. And I do agree with you 100% that at the end of the day, the safest way to have a game is physically. Though, I will say, though, a lot of games now don't come finished.
Yeah.
Even Tears of the Kingdom, I hate to put it this way, but came with a day one patch. And if you play Tears of the Kingdom on the cartridge without that patch, it runs terribly. It's bad.
But God bless Pikmin 4 because it came complete.
Yes,
darn it.
That's one of those games where like it did come complete and it was ready to go. And that's a game that you can put it in at any time, it'll work. But we're getting to this point now where even if you have the physical game, if you don't have the patch that goes with it, the game's either missing content, missing performance, improvements. They don't download those patches to the cartridge. They download it to the system. And so it's not me trying to say like, don't get physical games. It's me just kind of almost getting to the point where the reality is we are getting that choice taken away from us. And yes, the only way to stop it is to stop buying games. But then that's just the sad reality, is that we just have to stop buying the things that we love. We have to basically tell Nintendo no. But I mean, it's not just Nintendo though. I mean, I bet you money that when the next Sony system comes out or whatever system comes out, those games, they're going to go up. They're going to go up. The system's going to go up. Everything's going up. They're just 5 years behind the times. Nintendo was the unfortunate company that had to jump into to be the first one. to jump in there and be like, yeah, this is the market at the moment. We have to price this way because this is the only way for us to stay in business. And Nintendo's not the one shutting down studios like Microsoft. Nintendo's
and
not
Sony,
the one.
and Sony.
And Sony's having to force all their games to be multi-plat now. They're on PC, a lot of them now. Nintendo's one of those few companies that can keep their games on their systems, that can keep their developers paid, that has a positive cash flow, that most of the time launches games that are pretty much, I mean, some people argue like, oh, I don't like the frame around that, but the games don't crash. Like, they drop some frames here and there, but overall, every game Nintendo releases works.
Yeah, my West Virginia buddy that I mentioned time and time again, he can't, when he got Battlefield 2042 on PC, launch day, he could not turn left or right. You could not turn left or right in a shooter on launch day. That's crazy. That is absolutely crazy. This shouldn't be happening. And I know we're not the first people to complain about this.
Yeah.
People have been complaining about this for a very long time. And slight counter, I think Sony in some ways was the instigator, or the one who did it first, because they had the PS5 digital and then the PS5 disc, and so they just had the physical digital split, like, cost difference in the base console. So I agree with you. I think Nintendo's the first one to do it game wise, though even then not really, because
I'm talking like price
digital
wise.
Sales.
I think Nintendo's the first ones to have to jump in at this point in the market and say we have to raise our prices on our games, we have to raise our prices on our system, because that's what the market is. Where Sony, they price it at a certain price point when they first launched, right? And this is the way most consoles work, is that they have to keep things, you can't raise the price on the PlayStation 5. So they just have to eat it, right? You can only go down, you can't go up. Nintendo could have gone up and then brought down the price like they did with the 3DS or the GameCube. But they've kept the price at a place where they're safe, and maybe they do have the wiggle room to drop it if things get crazy. I don't know. But they're trying to look at the long-term market of, like, they've got to keep this price for the remainder of the Switch system. And I know some people are like, no, they should discount it, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, what if they can't? Sony, I'm sure at a certain point now, PlayStation 5s don't cost that much. The price of things has come, like, that hardware has probably gotten somewhat cheaper. So that does help them. But at the end of the day, they launched that in 2020. Prices weren't the same then as they are now. And they've kept the prices the same. Microsoft's been actually trying to sneakily increase their prices because they've released a new version of Xbox Series X that's more expensive, but it's their premium one, but they raised the price as well. They just didn't raise the price on their low-end systems because, again, they make money on Game Pass. So Nintendo's looking at it in the long game. They're like, we need this system to stay $450 for the next possibly 8 years, considering how the Switch 1 did, unless the Switch 2 just tanks. And then the game's the same thing. Nintendo looks at their IP and they say it's got this value. They may have to roll back on it. We may see more Nintendo sales and who knows, maybe that's what Nintendo's trying to do, is they actually want to go the Steam route and overprice their games and then just have them on sale more. I don't think so, but that would be insane if that was the strat. It was just to pull a Steam and just always,
But then you become the next Ubisoft.
You do, and that's what Nintendo is.
And a month later, it's half off.
And that's what Nintendo is trying to avoid. But what Ubisoft does is they hope that all the first, the day one people buy the game full price and they buy the deluxe editions, and then they cheapen it out for all the people that were hesitant. Nintendo just kind of has they keep the price the same forever, and that ticks people off, but at the same time, they keep selling. We'll see if this is the final straw for people. I see online people are saying, this is it, I'm not buying it, but online people don't make up the majority of people, and people are still out there buying $1,200 iPhones. Let's just be real here. And I know the iPhone has more utility, but there's people upgrading every 2 to 3 years on those things, whereas a Switch you can hang on to for longer. And yes, probably what's going to end up happening is people are just going to buy less games, which is why they have to raise the price, and why Nintendo wants to make sure that you're buying digital. Because if you're going to buy less games, you better buy them digital because we'll make more money. That's why they introduced the digital card sharing. It's why they're doing the game sharing for online, so you can have one card. And that would be interesting too. If they actually add that function to Mario Kart World, then suddenly the $80 price comes a little bit more palatable. If you only need one card to play with your friends online, that could be good. That could really save people a lot of money. You have one friend that has the game. Yeah, you got to wait for him to be available, or her. But at the end of the day, that does lessen the blow. So I don't know. It seems like Nintendo's trying different things to say, hey, you can share digital games. Hey, you can do game download. Hey, if you buy Mario Kart World, with the Switch 2, it's only $50 more. So it's like it's a $50 game. I know it's digital, right? That's the downside, but
it makes it enticing.
It makes it way more enticing. I think we're going to see a lot more of that. That's the digital voucher system they had for the Switch 1 was definitely that. I mean, you could buy Tears of the Kingdom for $50 if you got the voucher system. Yes, you had to buy 2 games and you had to buy them digital, but they were basically saying you can get games cheaper if you buy them digital, and you can have all your games there. It's super convenient to take all your games with you everywhere, and we make more money, and you have the convenience, and we promise not to shut down our servers. I don't know if that's true or not. Time will only tell. So that's the reality of what they're trying to do. Is it good for the consumer? Probably not. But again, it's one of those, like you said earlier, is how much does it mean to you? Like, does Mario Kart mean that much to you? Is it a game that you feel like you're going to get your money's worth out of? I personally think it is, because I bought the Mario Kart 8. I bought Mario Kart 8 at launch for the Wii U. Then our Mario Kart 8 Deluxe on launch for the Switch, and I've played that game throughout the whole lifespan, especially now that I have kids. It's like it's the de facto game. And it's coming out day one on the Switch too. So it's like it's probably a game I'll play for the entire lifespan of the Switch. So I think I will get my money's worth out of it. It's going to hurt. It's going to suck that first, getting it, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to get value out of it. But that's me, right? I think there's going to be a lot of people, especially people that don't have kids, that are going to see less value in Mario Kart. They're going to look at that price tag and be like, I saw one comment I thought was funny. It's like, that grass is looking pretty good outside. And I was like, yeah, I think we might see some more people touching grass because of this. And you know what? Bad for companies, but maybe that's good for society. Maybe it's good that prices are getting this crazy, because maybe people start reconsidering how much they want to play games. And you only buy a couple games a year. And you really think about, what are those games worth it? And then also, this is really good for indies. Holy crap.
That's true.
This is like, indies are eating good right now, because they can sell their games for way less. Their development costs are way less, and they will do fine out of this. So, I think it's just also a promotion. Like, you got to remember, these games are AAA games. Like, you're buying primo, like, steak, right? You're going to a nice restaurant when you buy one of those, like Mario Kart World, or you're buying Metroid Prime 4. Those are like top of the line games. Super precise, super well optimized. Every element of that game has been meticulously made. And I'm not saying the indie games aren't, but I'm just saying that there's just insane amount of money, fidelity of the games. Like, there's clearly a lot put into them. And then, so you can get an indie game for half the cost or a quarter of the cost and still get the same amount of enjoyment. So I think what's going to happen is more indie games are going to pop up. And Nintendo was very... I'm sorry, I'm talking so much. I'm consuming this whole talk. But Nintendo has the indie showcases, and I think they clearly want indies to be at their system, because it helps pad their system. They don't want to be the only ones making the games. They need indies to come along and keep the fun games coming. So that's why we saw Deltarune, and why we saw I know there's a few other indie games. Silksong. Holy cow. So yeah, I don't know. Sorry, I've ranted on there for a while. This kind of started as like a physical versus digital. It's one of the weird things where I agree with you, but I also am kind of like, I kind of see the reasoning for charging it more, because the carts are going to cost way more and the distribution. But I also think it's kind of scummy, because
I think that so here's my opinion. Nintendo is clearly committed to having a very consistent product and experience for their customer base, regardless if you're in Japan, if you're in California, if you're in New York, if you're in Europe, wherever, you get more or less the same game with obviously language translations. I would think that it would be consistent with that vision to make it so that you also pay the same amount. Now, it's not I get that the vision doesn't always, meet practicality, and you're right, there is a cost to it. Some of that, my point is I think that there's definitely a good profit margin on the game. I don't think anyone's disputing that. And I think that it would be most consistent with the vision to use that that profit margin to sort of average the cost of physical versus digital. And you're right, they want to move us toward digital. and who knows, maybe, in a few years I'll be singing a different song, whatever. But, ultimately, I think that the scummy thing about it isn't the $90 or the $80. I still think that that's a lot, but again, that's a value, a cost benefit ratio essentially that you need to sort of look at for yourself. It's the fact that some people have got to pay more than others for the same experience, just because you just want to be able to guarantee that you have it longer. And it, and like you said, it's not even a guarantee. You could lose the cartridge or whatever. But I just, that I think is the thing that I'm disputing, because I'd be having the same discussion with you if it was 60 and 70.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, and well, it's funny because I remember a while back, the whole argument for going digital was that they were going to make games cheaper than the physical games. And so it was actually supposed to be a benefit to go digital, because they were going to say, oh, we can make games cheaper because the distribution is cheaper and blah, blah, blah. And so back in the early days, that was like the thing. And then it never came. It was always the same price as physical. So they were like, what the heck? Shouldn't they be cheaper because we're not paying for the physical copy? And now that they do it, everyone's like, what the heck? So that's where I think there's a little bit of a challenge there. But I think the reason this feels more scummy is just that this doesn't feel like they're trying to save us money. This feels like a shepherd's stick trying to push us in a direction, because at the end of the day, that's where it's all heading to, is digital only. It's not like, hey, we're trying to save you money, like this game, all physical. Like if the game was, I think if the game was 70 physical and the game was digital 60, I would actually feel different than 90, 80. Because it's such a huge jump from the games being 60 to suddenly being 80, plus it's $30 more for a physical copy. That's why it's kind of crazy. If it was a $10 difference, I think I would be a little bit less concerned.
I was actually about to correct myself, because you're right. The simultaneous price bump and price differential gives it a different optics than, let's say that they had, been doing $70 for a while now. Tears of the Kingdom was the first $70 game. I was pretty confident that every Switch 2 game was going to be $70. And if they did offer a price decrease from there, if 70 was the status quo and they offered the price decrease, that is easier to swallow as a consumer. And so maybe there's something primal within us that sees a price bump and a price differential forming at the same time as price gouging.
Yeah.
Which it might be. It might, you could argue it fits the definition one way or another, but point being is, at the end of the day, there is the differential that does bother me, but you're right, the optics are different. So I will concede that.
I also think Nintendo's, and okay, I probably sound like Nintendo shill, and so I'm always just trying to look at the bright side, because here's the thing: at the end of the day, I still want these games, so maybe I'm the problem, but I'm still going to pay for these games because I'm just not going to buy.
We're all
many.
the problem.
Right.
We're all going to buy it.
But I think that this sounds like, almost in a way, because here's the thing: a lot of third-party developers, like if you notice in the Switch 1, there was a huge trend to buying a case and you had to download the game, because the third-party developers didn't want to pay the cartridge cost. So in a way, Nintendo's like, look, we will be the bad guys, and we're going to make it a new norm for physical games to cost $10 more, so that when you make your games physical, it's not shocking that third parties are charging more for the physical games. So they're setting a precedent that third parties can now follow, so that they'll make their games physical, because they've probably been complaining a lot about the cost of making games physical. Because when you make a Blu-ray on a PlayStation, it costs nothing. But these cartridges just haven't come down in price the way you would think they're still physical media. Like, they're still like you buying, basically, it's not a micro SD card. It's like, it's a specialized card for the game, and only for the Switch. And they the new ones, probably the base storage has got to be like 32 gigs minimum, so you're paying for a 32 gig high speed SD card for every single game you buy, special, proprietary. Obviously Nintendo, makes money on that, so it's definitely still Nintendo being the bad guy in this one. But, at least they're creating physical media. They're never going to put discs on a Switch. It has to be some form of physical media, and they're not going to just use micro SD cards, because those are easily hacked and pirated, and so Nintendo has to use proprietary media. And the fact that they're using basically the same form factor is kind of proof that they're trying to bring the cost down. But in order to make the cartridges more storage and faster speed, they're just going to cost more. And so the cost probably, I would assume, is probably $5 to $10 a cartridge. Maybe it's less, but the point is it's still a lot more. That it's probably double what they were paying before, and with the extra storage to fit the games. Um, I don't know. And there's obviously other things too, like where they're buying the cartridge from, who's making it. Is it China? I don't know. Like there's other factors in that. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to be positive, but it's pretty obvious that this is a shepherd's crook trying to lead the sheep towards digital. And that's the part I think that really sucks. It's the optics of the fact that they just did a huge price bump and they have the price discrepancy. And it's obvious that they want us to go digital with all the other marketing that they're doing. So that's where it kind of sucks because we kind of are almost like seeing the end times before us of physical media. And everyone's fighting that tooth and nail by buying physical, but by buying more physical, it's proving that Nintendo and other companies need to up their prices because they're losing more money on physical. They want to sell you digital because they can't make the same money. So like it's weird how it's an inverse thing of us buying more physical games kind of tells Nintendo like we need to raise our prices because we're losing too much money on those physical games. They're kind of hoping that we'll make the physical games, but lots of people are still going to buy digital now, kind of subsidize it. But so many people are buying physical now because of, the fear of losing their games. So it's all economics. And Nintendo, at the end of the day, is a company. We love the games they make, but at the end of the day, they're still there to make money. And they made a lot of money during the Switch. So they're pretty happy making more money. I don't know. It's tough. I'm probably just going to buy less games. I'm just going to buy very specific games. And the thing is, too, I did buy a lot of games digital during the Switch 1 era, so I'll probably still have a blend of physical and digital, just depending upon how much I care about the game. I think that's what it comes down to, too. If I really care about the game and having it long-term, like Zelda, I have those all physical. But if it's a game like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I genuinely don't care if I lose that game. I don't know why, because I'll just be playing the next Mario Kart. I don't go back and play old Mario Karts. I just don't. They seem fun at the time, but I always say I kind of go back and play them like, the new one's just kind of better. So maybe I'll be wrong.
8 is the best one so far.
It has been the 8 best one so far. But like Mario Kart Wii, people look back on with fondness, but I've gone back and played it, and it's like, I think there's some rose-tinted glasses there. Double Dash was really fun, and I do think that one probably holds up better than the Wii than Mario Kart Wii. But at the same time, it still has its own issues. And try to go back and play Mario Kart 64 is definitely like, that's rough, or the original Mario Kart. So, but again, that's personal, me, and maybe that's why this isn't as shocking or I'm just trying to frame my mind around the idea that this is just the way it is, and if I just get upset about it, then I'm just going to stop playing video games altogether. And I don't want that. Yeah. I still want to play these games, but I have to kind of accept that the companies are doing this, and the only way to fight it is to not play it, and that, I guess, the pain of change is still not greater than the pain of staying the same.
Yeah. My hope is that the price differential only rears its ugly head on a few select games.
Yeah.
I'm probably wrong about that, but, we'll see how people react to it. I don't think anyone likes bad headlines, least of all Nintendo, so I don't know. Like, we'll see. I doubt they backtrack on Mario Kart, but maybe we just see it less often in the future. Like, who knows? Like, Nintendo does sort of, they leave room for flexibility for themselves, and so I think I'm probably still going to try to aim for physical media when I can, but I think ultimately, like, with the way that life is and how much things cost anyway, like, maybe I was going to buy fewer games as it is, but we'll see.
Yeah,
all I know is that, Metroid Prime 4, I'm definitely getting.
Oh yeah, and it probably won't be $90 for that one because it's still a Switch 1 game, and I do think you should still buy physical. I still think there's value in it. We need to keep these games, but I guess I'm not looking at it from the perspective of like what's right or wrong. I'm always looking at it from just what is. Like, mm-hmm. I think we should always have physical. That's the right thing to do. But is that where it's going to be? Probably not. That's just the reality. So I'm kind of almost just trying to come to terms with what I think reality will be. But I could be wrong. If enough people don't buy these games, kind of like with the Wii U, right? If enough people don't buy it, Nintendo will switch gears. Nintendo has the cash flow to survive another Wii U. As much as I don't want the Switch 2 to be a Wii U, it could very well be a Wii U. And Nintendo will change. They'll change their pricing structure. They'll figure something else out. But Nintendo's also stuck in this weird place of like trying to please everyone because you had all these people wanting like this, Switch 2 to be this super powered machine. But Nintendo still has to price it as a superpower machine, so the price goes up, but they made it with almost all the specs they want, other than it being just a PS5 Pro, or OLED, I guess. But and so they've done all the stuff for the game, the graphics. They added voice chat. They've put GameCube on there. They put mouse controls on there. 120 hertz. Fast SSD with SD card express. I guess the better, if they wanted to make it even more user friendly, they could make it so you could upgrade the SSD to whatever size you want. But at the end of the day, they've done a lot of stuff that people were asking for a long time, and people are still not happy. So I don't know that there even is a way to please everyone and still stay in business. I think that's what the gaming industry is struggling with, is that they've appeased the gamers so long that now that the prices have to go up in order to stay afloat, like they're all upset, and there's going to be this weird correction in the industry, which I think is why we can see a rise of indies, and I think AAA games are just going to become fewer and fewer around, just because it's too impossible to support that kind of budget. Well, this has been a really long episode, way more than I expected.
I think we had a lot to say.
We did.
I almost think we don't call it episode 12. I think we call it Dandori Direct 2.5.
Right. I think there's just there's so much in this direct, and there's still more to come. There's going to be more directs coming. I don't think we're going to do another one of those live coverages of the direct. I don't think so for Mario Kart. Those last two were kind of special. It'd be fun, but I think this next one will be, maybe we'll do something. I might change my mind, but I just don't want it to become expected that every direct we do something, but we'll at least do a podcast about certain directs. We'll probably talk about the Treehouse on the next episode, maybe, if it's depending on what gets announced. But yeah, it's crazy. It's weird how this was such a high, we're so excited for this, and there is so much to look forward to, but there is just that glooming cloud in the horizon of the price and the digital conundrum, right? Mm-hmm. That is coming our way, and I think that's what scares us the most, is the lack of freedom and control in this area of our lives. And so I hope that I'm just glad Nintendo still is doing physical media despite the costs. They are still giving you that option, so I'm just glad that's an option. They aren't going full digital, full stop. But yeah, it does suck. The prices suck. So and I know I'm going to get lots of flack for some of my defenses in the comments and stuff, but I just feel like I have to look at things from every angle. It doesn't mean I'm not upset. I still don't want to spend that kind of money. I loved paying $50 to $60 for games. Yeah. But at the end of the day, I already don't buy a lot of games, so this is only going to affect my wallet by maybe $50 a year at the most. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where this goes, how the sales go, the backlash. If it hits mainstream media, that's when Nintendo might have to course correct. Right now, it's just within the little gaming sphere. But if mainstream media starts talking about prices and moms start talking about how they can't buy their kids a Nintendo system anymore, then Nintendo will pay attention, because that's the people they're targeting, not the Reddit users and the YouTube commenters. So anyway. Well, that's been episode 12. Super long, our longest episode ever. This will be fun to edit.
Yeah, I hope you enjoy. My cat made a bunch of noise.
I only heard him once, maybe twice, but yeah, thanks for everyone for listening. If you've listened this long, good for you. Good for you. Yeah. We're very happy that you stuck out that long. Maybe it was our controversial opinions that kept you wanting to know. Maybe you've already written a comment and blogged off, but thank you for listening. This has been the Super Dandori Bros. I'm Leighton. He's Ryan. And we'll talk to you again in the next episode. Bye.
See ya.